Hi, and welcome to The Grief Between Us. I'm Patti Merrill, chaplain and founder of The Waiting Place, a nonprofit grief center dedicated to creating space for honest conversations about loss, love, and the complicated journey of healing. I'm really grateful you're here. Whether you're grieving yourself, supporting someone you love, or simply wanting to better understand the human experience of loss, this podcast is a place where grief can be spoken about openly and listened to with compassion. So, wherever you are today, thank you for joining me. Let's begin. Thanks for joining us today. Today, I am joined by my friend Angela. Angela and I met years ago while we were both working in the temple together. And, she's one of those people who you just immediately gravitate to them. There's something about them, their love for life. It's just contagious, right? Angela got invited to join me because she's also a widow. And from the moment I found that out about her, I was so intrigued by just the way that she shows up. And she gave me hope that there'll come a point where I can show up that way too. Angela is a kindergarten teacher by profession, which I think helps in so many ways. We'll talk about that. I'm just really grateful that she's willing to join me today for this conversation. And I have no doubt that you will be glad that you joined us too. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm excited.
It means a lot. Let's just dive right in where my mind first went when I met you. Part of me, I will have to confess, is when I met you and realized you were a widow, the hope that I found is okay, I'm going to be able to get to a place where I can enjoy life again and not feel guilty about it. And, but I think society in general would say, oh, look at that. She's moved on. She's so strong. She's doing so great. But maybe that's a myth that we'd like to dispel or at least clarify. So let's talk about the difference between moving on and moving forward.
I think the first part of that myth that is hard is the she's so strong part. I have had people say that to me a lot, and I just want to say, no, that's not actually true. I am day by day just like everyone else. Or they'll say, how do you do everything? How do you keep it all together? Well, honestly, I don't, and no one can. We all just do the best that we can. But I think the moving forward part came from, I have some really great examples of that too that I have looked to. The day before my 5th birthday, my grandpa actually had a heart attack and died. And my dad was in Provo. I lived in Nephi at the time, and he'd gone to get my bike. So he wasn't home when his dad died. And I feel like I carried that for a little while, but I've worked through that. But I watched my grandma, and she didn't drive because he drove her everywhere. But she was involved a lot in the community, and she was, my safe space and a safe space for so many other people. And I kind of watched her try to figure out what her role was after that. And she thoroughly embraced the role of grandma and of mom still, but then she still reached out to the community and to all of those things. She loved anyone who came into her path, and she looked for ways to bring joy to the people around her, to minister to her neighbors and those kinds of things still. I also have my mom. So my husband died about 10 years ago, and my dad died 20 years ago, almost to the day, within the same week. And my dad had been sick for quite a while. I went with my mom to the hospital the night that he died, and we decided to stay, and there wasn't a place for us to stay. I'm who stayed with her. So we slept on, the benches in the waiting room. And I kind of watched that night as she went from I can't let go and so much grief just to peace. And I watched as she found peace and found, I need to keep going and I can do this. And so I watched that. And then I watched her after. She also was a kindergarten teacher.
Wow.
She went back to school after all of us had graduated. So I actually taught before her, but she went to school and embraced life, got play tickets and, did things with grandkids and all of the things that she still wanted to do. And so I had those two really great examples, and that helped, I think, a lot. The myth about moving on, the hard part with saying it's a myth is some people are able to do that. And we don't really know who, because we don't know their hearts or any of those things. They're able to compartmentalize and move on. I think for most people, we talked about it a little bit before, you carry it with you. So it is a filter that I look at everything every day with. My daughter Audrey actually sent a meme to me this week that said, I want to be there for all the memories because I had a front row seat at a funeral for someone I wish was still here. I mean, it was better worded than that, and I think that's true. I think it's a filter that I look at everything through, and I want to be part of the lives of my children and my grandchildren because he didn't get the chance to do that, if that makes sense.
That's beautiful and amazing and inspiring.
Ugh. But it's
Yeah.
something that you have to do
Yeah.
a little bit at a time, I
Yeah.
think.
It seems like it's just a very personal journey. Everybody's got to take it the way that they have to take it, right?
Yeah. I also think that this is who I was before.
Mm-hmm.
And this was my personality. I want to go do this. I want to go see that. We had done road trips all over the country with our kids, and I just want to see things and know things and do things. And so being who I am and being genuine to myself includes all of those things. And so it was important for me to still do that and to have that with my children, but also for myself, because it is who I am.
Yeah. I love that. So what do you think has changed? What has changed about the way you live life from before?
I take so many pictures and it drives my girls crazy sometimes, my family crazy. I also work with a group of youth through 4-H that are seniors and juniors in high school, and it makes them crazy too. I say, someday you will be grateful that I follow you around and take your picture all the time. So I take lots of pictures just because I don't have as many pictures as I wish I had. I mean, part of it is the time. We didn't
Sure,
have a
yeah.
camera in our pocket that we could, always take pictures, but I wish I had more pictures of memories. I also think I'm more intentional about making memories than I was before. I'm less likely to just let something go if we have the opportunity to do something, because I want my children and my grandchildren and also myself to have those memories and to be able to say, oh, remember when we did that, and to have that connection. And I think that's important.
Oh, it's so beautiful. So let's talk a little bit then. Like, it sounds like a lot of the things that you do now they're so intentional to help strengthen the relationships and the connections that you have with people. How does your love for Billy factor into that? Like, how does that still live with you now?
I guess for starters, just that filter. Like, I know that nursery was his favorite calling. He loved babies and little kids and all of those things. And so now having grandkids, for instance, I know that he wishes he could be there. And so I try to keep that with me, that I am. And we talk about Papa Eckhart and all of those things, the things that he loved and those things, because I want them to know that they are loved by more than just me. It helps me too. I'm sad that he's missing those things, but I want to make sure that they remember and that I remember, because I know he would love to be here. And there have been times where I know he has been here. I did go when my second daughter went through the temple after the endowment session. My then bishop came up to me and said, I'm supposed to tell you your husband was here, but you didn't listen. So since then, I have tried to be more intentional about listening as well. And there are times that I know that he's been there, that I know that my dad has been there. Probably the biggest one, I had a daughter that wrecked. My youngest daughter wrecked. She was coming through an intersection and someone was texting and ran the red light and T-boned her car just at the driver's door, and then took the whole front of the car off. And the people that came were amazed that she walked away from that wreck. And I'd always tease her, you have a whole team of guardian angels that follow you around. But the biggest one I know is her dad. And I know he was, so there's been those big things, but also lots of little things too.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I had a friend come visit me one time, and she was a good friend of my husband's. And she came just randomly knocking on my door and let me know that she was sent on an errand from Roland to give me a message that I wasn't receiving.
You were not listening. It's hard because you get so caught up in all of the stuff that sometimes it's hard to listen. So I have to be more intentional with that as well.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love about working in the temple is it's just even more than when I go as a patron.
Yeah.
It's just some time to like listen in the quiet. And I love that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So I love, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say I love, but it's fascinating to me that you come from this long line of widows and that they set a beautiful example for you of how to keep living and how to be able to move forward while carrying that sorrow and that grief. Do you feel like it was just there, you just knew how to do that? Or was there a moment when you had to say, okay, I can be joyful and it doesn't mean I'm forgetting. I can be joyful and it doesn't mean that I'm healed, right? So to speak.
It was pretty soon after my husband had passed away. I was with my girls and we had gone out to dinner and I had spent a lot of time thinking about what my life looked like now and what my role was and what that, how that was going to look. And I did have a moment when it was a choice. I feel like I made a choice. I looked at my girls who had just lost their dad and thought, I can't have them lose both parents.
Mhm.
And I know that happens. And I'm not saying that that shouldn't happen, that people go into, I don't even know how to say that without being.
They go to a dark
They
place.
go
I
to
mean,
a
the
dark.
grief just takes
Yes,
over, right?
I knew I couldn't let them lose both parents, and that I wanted to make sure that they knew it was okay for them to. I mean, they weren't super young, but they were just starting their lives, really, and I wanted them to know that it was okay for them to like go back to college. Two of them were at college and came home, but I wanted them to go back to school and to, find someone that loves them and on all of those things and still be able to keep moving forward.
Mhm.
And I felt like if that was going to happen, it started with me.
Yeah.
And so it was a very conscious decision in the beginning. And sometimes it was hard
Yeah.
in the beginning, but it got easier. And we learned how to support and love each other through that. And I'd have a very different relationship with my girls than I would have. Not better, not worse, just different. Yeah, especially so my baby, it was not a baby. She's 25 and she's been on a mission and she went to Utah State for a little bit. And right now she's back at my house and she and I have a very different relationship than we would have had all of this not happened. And I am super grateful for that relationship. But I worry sometimes that she feels like she can't keep moving forward.
Yeah.
So I have to be very conscious about that and making sure that she knows that that it's okay for her to do that. She doesn't have to take care of me.
So I have a question that, like, this is a struggle for me. So maybe it's a struggle for some of our listeners too. How do you do this without being dismissive of your own grief and pain? Like, how do you show up for your kids in this way without dismissing your own pain? Does that make sense what
Yes,
I'm
no,
asking?
that absolutely makes sense. And that gets easier, I think, as well. In the beginning, sometimes it meant like making myself go and making it about them instead of about me for a little while. As time has gone on, that's one of the things I think that has gotten easier is I know more about my own grief, if that makes sense. And so I'm better at setting like limits for myself as far as, oh, that's more than I can handle right now, but I could do this, like finding another way to support them if it's something that's too hard for me, or finding a way to kind of channel that. I don't know. For instance, holidays are really hard, especially in the beginning. And Christmas Eve had been our big thing, kind of more maybe than Christmas. Anyway, the cemetery where he's buried, they do luminaries on Christmas Eve.
Cool.
And so you go over and the cemetery, it's in the dark and just full of families standing at graves with luminaries. And I didn't even know that was a thing before I lost my husband.
Yeah.
But And so we tried to include that tradition in our Christmas celebration. And at first it was very painful.
Mm.
And we would go over and I'd be like, I don't know what we're supposed to do here, kind of thing. But it is something that has grown into, I feel like a joyful part, which sounds silly,
Mm.
but a joyful part of our Christmas Eve celebration, just because we know that it's a way that we can honor him and include him, but it's not as painful anymore. So some of it really is just time. And I wish I could wave a magic wand and
Mm.
give you all the answers, but it's different for everyone too. And that's so
Yeah.
hard.
You said it feels silly. Why does it feel silly to have that joy in those moments?
Well, I think that in our society, we feel like we're not supposed to anymore. I feel like it, well, the word widow was really hard for me at first. And I think partially because what I knew about widows is that they were old people who lived in their homes and didn't talk to anyone anymore and needed people to go help them all the time. You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
that's even though that's silly because I had a mom and a
Yeah.
grandma that weren't that way, but that's just kind of the impression that we've been given as a
Mm.
society. And so at first it felt like that's not what I was supposed to do.
Mhm.
And then as I worked through that, I knew that that's what I needed to do
Mm.
to be able to keep who I was and to be able to support my family in the way that they needed that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that society imposes so many things on us that we get to decide whether we're going to hold on to that or not, though, right?
Yeah.
And maybe for a time I want to say society does all these things that are unhealthy, but maybe for a time it is what's needed,
Yeah.
and then we can grow beyond that.
I think
Um
that's true.
and that's okay, right?
Um, in my neighborhood, actually in my job, in my faith community, there's been more than one time where I've had to say, I'll be sitting in the meeting while they're talking about widows and they need this and this and this and this. The first few years, I didn't say much.
Mm.
I just listened. But as I've gotten farther away from that trauma, in time at least, I have gotten so I speak up and say, now, wait just a minute.
Mm.
My neighborhood actually has quite a few young widows, not
Mm.
really young, but 40s, 50s. And so I have had to kind of train the leaders of my church congregation
Mhm.
to think about widows in a different way
Yeah.
and that it's okay to say, we would like to come help you. What can we help you with instead of
Yeah.
dropping off a basket of oranges, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do have to kind of uh, think about things differently. But if I wasn't in this position, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known to do that. So you have to.
So you say something that it can be tricky, After my husband died, a lot of people would often be like, "Well, what do you need? What can we do?" And I'm like, I don't even know. I have no clue, right? And
Mhm.
if I did, I don't feel like I can impose. And I would have people say, "If there's anything you need, please call me and let me know." And I
And I
know
think
that
I
they're
was one of those
genuine.
people, Patty.
Well, but the offer is genuine. That you know that they love you, that they would do anything, come running at the drop of a hat. But to take that on in addition to everything else, and I truly thought, even if I think of something, I'm not going to call you
Yeah.
because that's just one more thing that I have to do, right? And it's not because I don't believe you. It's not because I don't trust you or anything. And so it makes me think, gosh, I think the question is twofold. How do we not say something that's going to make it harder for the person that's grieving? And how do we, as the griever, give grace to somebody who says something that's not helpful?
It's so hard just because, like you said, it comes from a place of love. Most of the time, people, when they say things, they're not trying to be hurtful.
Yeah.
They're not trying to cause problems or any of those things. They really want you to know that they're there and they love and support you. But it is overwhelming to have people asking all the time. And to know what to say and how to manage that is really hard. Right after my husband died, I had some friends from my ward who came and cleaned my kitchen while I was gone,
Mhm.
which was so very sweet of them, but overwhelmed me
Mhm.
beyond what I could deal with at that moment. And they were trying to be so sweet. And so in the middle of me being overwhelmed, I had to remember that that was what they thought was helpful and that they were trying to be helpful. And I've tried to carry that with me as I've gone. And I try to be really intentional about what I say to people, but it's hard.
Yeah.
You and I have actually had this conversation before about helping each other to know when something is hurtful or when something could have been said in a different way, or perhaps something different could have been done. And I try to do that with people I have a connection with. And then people that I'm not comfortable having that conversation with, I just try to remember that they don't know better. And that I'm grateful that they don't know better.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that they haven't had to do that
Yeah.
in a way that makes them aware, if that makes sense.
Totally. I remember after my daughter Lorianne died, there were so many people who just said things that were not helpful. I think the one that I heard the most that was the most hard to hold was, she's in a better
I
place.
hate that so much.
And I like, in a better
Can you
place than
edit
her
that out? I shouldn't have
mother's.
said I hate that, but I really do.
Like, she's in a better place than her mother's arms. And I would always have to think, they don't know what they're saying because they
Yeah.
have not lived this. And I can be grateful that they don't know what they're saying and give them that grace. It was harder for my husband, and it started to put up barriers, and that's what I worry about, is people saying the wrong thing enough times that then it erodes at the relationship, right? And then you can't have the same relationship with those people in your life anymore. And it's hard to give grace and give grace and give grace until finally you're like, I have no more grace to give. You just keep saying these hurtful things. But I love what you said, that you have some relationships in which you can say, like, that wasn't helpful. And what does that do to the relationship?
Most of the time, I feel like it made it stronger.
Yeah.
And I think that helping them be aware also helped me in some ways, because I had to think about, this wasn't helpful, but maybe you could say it, like, frame it like this or something. And so I had to think about what would have been helpful. And that is still hard for me.
Yeah.
Even 10 years out, people will say, do you need help? And I'm like, nope. I'm good. And
Yep.
sometimes I really could use help, but
Yeah.
it's hard for me to do that, which is also silly.
And one thing we named is that a lot of times people say these stupid things because they just don't know. So I had an interesting experience recently that, like, this is really kind of vulnerable. And, I've been a bereaved mom for over 30 years. And for the last several years, I've been doing deep dives and trying to understand grief, and what's helpful, what's not helpful. I'm trying to build a grief center, for goodness sakes, right? Hey, sorry to interrupt. This is Patti. Just before we continue, I want to share something briefly. As the founder of The Waiting Place, a nonprofit grief center created to support people as they navigate loss, and as a chaplain, one of the ways that I offer support is through grief companionship, which means I'm simply walking alongside people in their grief journey with compassion, listening, and spiritual care. If you or someone you love could use that kind of support, you can visit thewaitingplacefoundation.org, go to the community tab, and then click on programs and services to learn more. Or you can go directly to the contact page to reach out. It would be my privilege to sit with you in that sacred space and accompany you. I'm in school to become a chaplain, so I'm just trying to take in all of these. And I think some people are starting to look at me like, she knows what to say and what not to say.
Literally, I think that of you.
Literally just the other day, a friend of mine confided in me of something that happened in her life. And I said the absolute wrong thing. And she sat with it for a few days. And then she messaged me back and was just very open and honest and said, that was not helpful. It totally dismissed my experience and my pain. And I wasn't seen. I wasn't held. It was like all the things that I try to do. Grief needs to be witnessed, acknowledged, accompanied, doesn't need to be fixed. And what she felt from me was, I was trying to fix it. And at first, when she shared this with me, I was hurt and I wanted to be like, but no, that's not like, this is what, and then she continued on to say that because she knows my heart, she knows that my intentions weren't to do that. Right. And she gave me grace and she said, I'm going to receive it the way you intended, but I want you to know that it wasn't helpful.
And how amazing of her to do that.
Yes,
Especially
absolutely.
in that way to
And
say,
still in the middle of her grief, like she's still holding this very heavy thing, and that she was willing to say, look, I'm going to prioritize a little bit our relationship because that matters. And I feel in that moment, like our hearts became a little bit more closely knit together,
I think
like
that's
the
true.
scriptures talk about.
Well,
and I'm so grateful
and
for her.
also in that she's already holding this really heavy thing. I think that we have to choose. We can let all of those things add to the heaviness, or we can give grace and we can let go of those things because we already have enough to hold. We don't need, all that other stuff too.
What a beautiful example of that. And you have, I mean, you made me think of that because you do that as well. So I'm going to try to be more like Angela when I grow up.
Well,
that's what I'm going to try to do.
Just know that Angela has her days as well. So
thank you. Thank you. Long-term grief. So how long has it been?
It's been 11 years in March. So yeah, it's been a while.
I didn't realize March. March is my time too. So how does grief change over the years? Does it change over the years? Like, I know what it's been like for my loss of my daughter, which has been long term, right? But how do you feel like your
you could
grief?
teach me 30 years is a long time.
It's a different. I don't know.
It is
different. It is different. I don't know. And because we're different people, we hold that different.
I think I always say softer when someone asks me, and I don't know if that even makes sense, but it doesn't feel as raw and sharp as it did before. It's still there. Now I'm going to cry right now, but I still have moments when I cry in the grocery store or when someone says something and I go, oh, and my kindergartners are like, what is wrong with you? I just say, I'm fine. I still have those little moments and those little triggers, but I feel like I've learned how to hold it in a way that I can help other people. I actually have four friends in the last 6 months that have lost their husband that are the same age as me. Wow. One is across the country and I haven't seen her in a really long time, but it was, her husband had cancer and it was a long traumatic thing. And my heart just broke because I didn't know exactly what she was going through, but I knew some of what that felt like. And so I feel like I have been better. I've tried to turn my grief into a way of helping other people that are dealing with that, because I had people that helped me when my husband and I lived in Logan. He worked with a guy that was a little bit older. Older than me. I was like 20 something then. So he was like probably 25. And we set him up with one of my friends from high school that was older than me too. And he was killed in an accident, a head-on accident in Cache Valley about, 7 years before my husband. And she was another one that I watched her make the conscious decision to pick up her life and just go on the best the way that she could. And she went back to school. She actually became a teacher as well. She had been a stay-at-home mom and she went back to school and became a teacher and worked to, support the people around her and her family and all of those things. And so I had lots of examples from that too, and that's who I wanted to be. I wanted to be that person that remembered, her husband was killed in December and I had a daughter that got married in December. And instead of grieving her husband that week, she brought freezer dinners for me to be able to put in a crock pot because I had a wedding that week. I mean, just things like that. And so I've tried to channel that grief into helping other people. I have a friend who lost a sister and I don't know her super well, I dropped something off at her house, and she messaged me later and she said, "Now that I'm one of the people that understands, I wanna be one of the people that helps too."
It's beautiful.
And so I've tried to do that just because I can't understand exactly what they're going through. All of us are different and our situations are different. And I have to remind my girls, it's not a contest. No, grief
Yep.
is not a contest. Everyone has things that they're grieving, and we can always help and reach out to people and channel our grief that way. And that helps me, I think. Other than that, sometimes in my family have gotten a little bit, I don't even know the word. My girls like to tell dead dad jokes sometimes because they have started to use humor to deal with that a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we're a little bit insensitive about grief at our house just because it's been part of our life
Yeah.
for a long time. Before I told you I lost my dad, but I also lost both in-laws and my brother-in-law. And so my girls had been to a lot of funerals by the time they'd been to my husband's funeral. They have sung at lots of funerals before that, and so sometimes we're a little bit insensitive and they use humor to, I mean, not with someone else, but
Sure. But
with
within
themselves,
yourselves.
within
Yeah.
ourselves.
Hmm.
And they send me memes that I go, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this." But that's how, we've learned to make grief part of our life and to laugh at it sometimes, but also to help other people that are struggling.
So what I'm hearing is this idea of permission. Like you give yourselves permission to feel it and to navigate that in whatever feels helpful in the moment without worrying about how other people are going to perceive that. So where does that permission come from?
So originally, well, I feel like I gave my girls permission
Yeah.
in the beginning, but since then they have given themselves permission. I feel like the examples that I had led me to give myself permission, but it took a little while. My daughter, she's my baby. She was actually working on a show. She's tech for a theater just in school, and she was working on a show. That's where she was when her dad died, and they went to get her. And the show was the next week. And she didn't know what to do with that because she knew that she wanted to go still do what she was supposed to do, but she was worried about what everyone would think. And I actually literally gave her permission right then to go and be in a place that, it was one of her safe places with people that she loved and doing something she loved. And she said, "Well, what if everyone else, someone's going to say something?" And I said, "Don't worry about what anyone else. We have to do what's best for us and not worry about that." And so I feel like over and over, we've given each other permission to be able to do those things, which is silly because we don't need permission from anyone else.
Yeah. But somehow we think we do, right?
We
And
do.
I think what I'm learning is that I don't necessarily need permission from someone else, but sometimes I need help from someone else to allow
To
myself
allow
to give that
yourself.
permission,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Um and permission to give myself permission, right?
It's so
Is yeah.
true. And
Yeah.
it's easier for me to give someone else it was hard for me to move through that just because I didn't know anymore what was expected of me and I didn't know how to do that. That doesn't make sense. But when you're in the middle of it,
Yep.
you have to think through all those things in a way that you haven't really thought through before
Yeah.
and give yourself permission to give yourself permission, which is,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I mean, I remember in this first year since Roland died, I've done a lot of traveling and I've done a lot of things that were fun and cathartic and healing. And there's been a lot of times when I've had that worry that somebody else is going to see this and think that I didn't love him or
yeah.
that our relationship wasn't that important. And I had to, and some days it still is that constraint that is there, but to allow myself to think, you know what? Doesn't matter what other people think. I had a friend that used to tell me, it's none of your business what other people think.
Which is easy to say, but
Easy
hard
to
to
say.
do.
Yeah. And to just navigate through that narrative of you don't want people to perceive something that's not true.
But I also think I had to tell myself that he wouldn't want to have wanted our lives to end too because his did, And that I think that was helpful too, to just be like, this is what he would want for us to do, to still live and just still make memories and just still, I mean, I feel like I've done a lot of things since then. Some of them I would have done either way, but some I wouldn't have done if he was still around. And that's okay. I would have done different things if he was still around. So finding your path and what that looks like doesn't mean that you have moved on. It just means that you still are here and you still need to be a person and have a life and all of those things. And that's important.
That's beautiful. Let's talk about faith for a minute. Faith in the whole journey. How does that show up, and how does faith help you hold your grief in ways that support you? Does that make sense?
I think for me, um, in my belief in the church, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that membership and that doctrine meant a lot to me. And I had been raised from the time I was really little, singing "Families Can Be Together Forever," and I thought that I knew what that meant when my dad died. And I thought that I understood that. And then after my husband died, it was like, I need to know what I really believe. Like, I've been saying this. This is something that we say and something that we sing and we talk about it like it's a real thing. But in that moment, you have to go, ooh, is this really what I believe? And I found that comforting, but I also had to go through a time where I wanted to make sure that I knew that that was true and that that's what I believed. I think that faith for me plays an important part of because I do believe that I will be with him again and that in the sealing power and all of the things that are part of my faith community, and that's important. But I also think having something to believe in and having a community to support you is important. So no matter what church you belong to or what group you are part of, finding something to believe in and finding people that believe and support you is an important part of making it through grief and figuring out what your path looks like. Sometimes you feel sometimes in all of this, it's easy to feel alone. Even when you're surrounded by people, it's easy to feel alone. But knowing that there are really people that are there and knowing that you have something that you believe in, for me, I feel like I have been supported over and over by our Heavenly Father. And I can look at things in my life and go, oh yeah, that's, I call it tender mercy. I know that Heavenly Father was like, I see you. I can see what you need. And a lot of times it wasn't big, giant things. It was just little things. And I don't know that I would have been able to pick things up and move on without that. I have a friend who lost her husband just recently, who is a very active Catholic member. And I know that she has found that same support and love there. And I am far away from her. So I'm grateful that she has a community that loves and supports her. And I know that not just the faith, but also the community is important.
Yeah. Thank you. You give good words to all of that. So as we wrap this up, and like I could talk to you for hours, Angela, about this and everything. And I'm so grateful you're here. But before we close, if there's anyone listening right now who's kind of in that place where they're not sure that they can step into life again and having joy and allowing that joy to come through, that there's still guilt and shame that's like it's all wrapped up in there, right?
It's all there.
If that person or those people were in the room with us today, what would you say to them?
It's such a hard thing because everyone is different. And there is, no matter what trauma or loss you have, there is always guilt of things that you should have done or should have said, and pain for ways that your life has changed and ways that your family's, like all of those things. But in the middle of all of that, I would say give yourself permission to be yourself and to find the things that help to make you feel more like you. And also give yourself permission to change the path, to know that this is what I had planned. And I think that's one of the hardest things about grief is you lose not only the person, but you lose all the plans that you had and all the way that you thought your life would be. And so it's okay for your life to look different, and that's okay. Um I do crazy things. You said you like to travel. I also like to travel. And last year I actually got to go to New York, and on New Year's Eve, we went to Times Square and I got to be one of the people that threw confetti off the building. And it was surreal and crazy. It's so crazy.
So
But
cool.
in the middle of that, I thought to myself, I never would have, I don't think I would have done that if my husband was still around. And then a little bit of guilt came with that I'm here doing this and I probably wouldn't have. And I kind of had to work through that too in the middle of it, that it's okay. It's okay that my life looks different. It's okay that I'm doing things without him. I certainly hope he's doing things without me. I know he has a lot of things to do, and I want to continue to make myself, not only to make memories for myself, but to make myself better and to add experiences and things that I can use to help me and to help the people around me. And I don't know how throwing confetti helps anyone, but it sure was fun. And I kind of had to work through that
Yeah.
night. I remember thinking I never would have done this. And that's okay. It's okay to change what your life plan is. It's okay to do things for you and give yourself permission and don't worry about what anyone else thinks.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your heart and your experiences and your love and your tears.
And I can't talk when I cry, but it's
All of this matters, and it's so, I mean, I said this before, but honestly, if nobody listens to this and this is all it is, I've benefited, and I'm grateful for your willingness to do that.
Oh, well, I appreciate you doing this podcast and doing your work with grief, because I do think there there are better ways to support each other through that. And as a society, we haven't figured that out yet. So
And we're all learning.
I,
I mean,
I
like,
know
that was a wake-up call for
yeah,
me this week. I'm like, wow, I still have a lot to learn.
we all do.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have the conversation be open and to
Yeah.
be talking about it in
Yeah.
a way that's helpful.
I think the most important thing that comes out of all of this, like that realization, that wake-up call that I got, the conversations we just had, and that I have other places too, is that the main thing is that we need to find and provide safe spaces
Mhm.
to have these open-hearted, raw conversations, because in that comes healing. And not that grief has to be fixed, right? Healing grief and fixing grief are two totally different.
Topics.
Yeah, but we can heal. Sometimes I'm really resistant even to healing.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I've decided that's okay. In those moments where I want to resist healing, that's okay. And then there's other moments where I can be open to it and allow it to happen. And
Yeah, I think you have to think again about what healing means, because sometimes we think it means it makes everything all better, but most of the time when your body heals, you have a scar still.
yes,
You still carry that with you, and so you can be healed and still carry scars with you. And they're just not open wounds anymore that are so hurtful all the time. I actually had breast cancer and had a lumpectomy, and I have a little scar, and sometimes it just randomly hurts. And it's been healed for, over a year and a half, probably all the way healed. But sometimes that little scar still sometimes pulls. And that's to me like what healing is. Like, you can heal and still carry hurt and a scar from it. It's just how you deal with that hurt and how it hurts, I guess, is probably the biggest thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for doing this. And thanks for being my friend.
It's been so joyful, honestly. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today on The Grief Between Us. If this episode and the things we talked about resonated with you, I would be so grateful if you shared the podcast with someone else who you think might enjoy listening to it. The more these conversations are shared, the more we can help create spaces where grief is understood rather than avoided. Until next time, take gentle care of your heart.